It says live here. Can people see me?
Yes, we will be driving people in a minute. So yeah, you can, slowly start talking, but yes, people will arrive soon. You are live, Jim. You can start.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. This is Jim Rivas, CEO of Cloud Security Alliance, and very excited to navigate the very interesting technology we have here to tell you why I think we are in a new era of cybersecurity. We're a lot of new things here. It's always fun to test new things, but what we're going to try and do is to share my presentation, and my marketing team will let me know if it's working out okay. But there it is. We'll go into presentation mode now, and hopefully you're seeing that okay. This is called The Gods in the Clouds, the new era of cybersecurity. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that means. First, I think it's very important in these tough times that I try to give you the wisdom that I have about cybersecurity. You should definitely be an optimist, and so this kind of expresses how I feel about things. Be half full, and the only thing better than a half full glass of whiskey would be multiple half full glasses of whiskey. So let's use that as some simulated positive thinking in what we do. So first I wanted to talk just a little bit about the evolution of cybersecurity, and it's you see different sort of graphs like this, and I'd say maybe you could think of it in terms of the early mainframe security, the phone phreaking that happened. That's sort of this combination of the corporate security and the individual sorts of sort of consumer-based security out there that happened. And that's sorry, I'm just checking my messages here and seeing how we're doing here. Good. And so then we started getting more and more into from phone phreaking to consumer PC-based security, Michelangelo virus, and it still wasn't very well connected to corporate security issues, mainframes, the hacking that happened there, I think Cuckoo's Egg, things like that. And kind of what brought things together, I think Dan Gear sort of said this is sort of the beginning of the internet security, was when Microsoft put Windows 95 delivered it with a TCP/IP stack, and that really sort of connected everything together and created the internet security industry that we have. And you notice that Bill Gates is someone that gets a lot of press, and he's one of the greatest humanitarians in the world. I think we all agree with that. But he's gets quoted in the news and does a lot of interviews about the pandemic and what we should do about the pandemic. And I guess to be fair, he's been dealing with and creating a lot of viruses since 1995. So I guess that makes sense that he has that role. But so we had that internet security that really started becoming more and more the focal point of all sorts of information security issues. And then cloud becoming this compute as a utility and having all business inside of here in a very much on-demand way has really changed, and I'll talk a lot more about that from a cybersecurity perspective. It's really created this new era. And another sort of way of sort of thinking about the evolution of cybersecurity is the Homo sapien, this unusual creature, which what I would posit to you is that there's an aspect of cybersecurity where we're actually evolving to get more and more stupid. We're getting dumber and dumber. And what do I mean by that? You could actually factually sort of posit that this is the case, that if you look at the growth of the amount of compute processing power that we as an industry need to figure out how to secure, proactively respond to incidents and all of that, we're doing that with, relatively speaking, a smaller amount of human cranial capacities. There's less human brains per CPU, per gigabyte, however you'd want to break that down. So you could say we're actually getting dumber. And so there's obviously some things we need to do to think about that. And then finally, when you think about this evolution of cybersecurity, it in a lot of ways does evolve to become more and more evil, and we've got to do what we can to fight that. So it's very interesting how this evolves when you think about it in those sorts of ways. And it's hard to sort of get that viewpoint when you are just sort of in the middle of things, when you're like so close to any sort of incidents and anything else. And the sort of analogy I like to make is the whole idea of your children, watching your children grow, and you don't really notice a change. And I notice, like, for my grandchildren, I go on a business trip for 2 weeks, which sadly I haven't been doing very many of those, and it's amazing how much they've changed. And then you gain that different perspective of how much things are changing. Well, how has cybersecurity changed? We will look back on 2020 and we will say that the pandemic was actually the giant killer asteroid that destroyed on-premise IT. And we're still feeling the effects of that, but clearly we've gone from this a lot of cloud prior to COVID to a large degree of cloud, and mostly cloud. And this utility is just something that's really unstoppable. And that's really what we are, that's what we're faced with, that's what we're seeing. And so there's a lot of indicators. I'm going to talk about this, and it's really just going to grow. And it's been pretty interesting with the pandemic. It's given us a lot of different sort of perspectives on what's important in an organization, where our information is, what we need to do to provide the appropriate capabilities. I've learned that I have a female person living in my house all this time. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to get up the nerve to ask her name here pretty soon. But when you think about maybe 100,000 businesses, we've seen a lot of things that are absolutely being closed. We're seeing a lot of budgets being slashed. Any new business that is being created now is being created in the cloud only. That's just a fact of how things are moving and going. So this new day is cloud only. And again, it's this compute as a utility. If you look at water, electric, gas, all of these sorts of utilities, once we got to the point where we figured out how to deliver essential services as a utility, they certainly do change in what they can do and their capabilities, but they seem to stay in a pretty permanent fashion. And so this is what we see, and I'll definitely be building more on this and what it means. So we often hear about, and I talk to futurists, I talk to a lot of people that actually try to understand and ask us, hey, is there anything out there that would actually consume the cloud, change the cloud? And well, that's a good question, and it's something that we're always trying to think about. The slide on the top right, that's Moore's law, and Moore's law says we've got more and more compute everywhere, and so we have it just the amount of compute you have in your home, the amount of compute you have on your body is far more than what NASA had to launch man on the moon. And so there's this one sort of position that says, hey, we could actually see the cloud, everything you need to know could be on a device eventually. So maybe that means that we're not going to do cloud. Or what about 5G? What does that mean? We can transmit. And 6G, let's think about that. Can we be able to transmit so much information to all these different devices that cloud is something that is not necessarily going to be as necessary? Or what about the law? That lower left is the Supreme Court building, if you weren't clear about that. And that's something that we're going to be thinking about as national security and cybersecurity be more one and the same. And this balkanization idea, is that going to stop cloud? Is that going to consume it? And then there's Godzilla. I mean, there's always going to be a Godzilla. There's always going to be that black swan that's going to come. Is there something there that we see? And really, I see cloud as being so resilient. The platforms are so deeply adopted by the developers and the entrepreneurs that are making the technology. And cloud is not all about centralization and big data centers. It's about this automated orchestration that provides the compute service when you want it, when you need it. And we're going to see over time that as other technology trends, the consumerization trends, and Moore's Law grow, you will see more of this compute being done in a lot of different areas, but it is going to be cloud. It's going to be orchestrated by cloud. So what I like to sort of talk about then for your information technology, and you can see where you are on this this spectrum here, but my sort of view is that you've got these sort of two slices of the pie. You got your cloud-based information technology, you got the cloud that you're using, and then you've got any other technology that's managed by the cloud. And you think of IoT, you think of edge devices, it's all cloud managed, cloud orchestrated, cloud provisioned. I think one of the interesting things, the twist to sort of think about the SolarWinds issue is that there's a lot of compute that you think of, oh, it's on-premise, it's my infrastructure, and it has this persistent connection back to get updates, to get improvements, to get new threat information, whatever it might be. And that pretty much characterizes everything else we have. So as we think about, in the old times, you think about, well, your company, what are the different sort of non-intuitive ways to hack in? Like maybe you can get in through the HVAC system or some other admin modem that's set up. And so we've got to think about all those different threat vectors. Now you got to think about that for all the other companies that might have some privileged system. So now we got to think about our strategic partners' HVAC systems and all the other things that they have going on. So this is really what it looks like. And when you think about large, maybe campuses, what that is going to be looking like in the future, they're going to have, even with decommissioned data centers, more compute technology, more raw storage, more CPU power than they did when they had their data center eventually. But it's going to be distributed in everything, and it's going to be managed by cloud. And this is going to be with us for decades. So another aspect that I want to talk about is the people aspect that also sort of tells me that we're at this shift and this change to what the migration of people, how that indicates how we're really in this era of cloud being the new cybersecurity era. So we've heard a lot about these unfilled jobs, a lot of jobs in cybersecurity. Microsoft's created some research saying we're going to see 750% growth in cybersecurity in the next 5 years, which is stunning. That's just far more than you see anywhere else, you know, in any other IT part of the industry. It's just far more. So, you know, what does that mean, and how will those be distributed? I can tell you from our LinkedIn group, which is now about 108,000, that, you know, you look at the major cloud providers, they all have got about 1,000 people in there, 1,000 security experts. Maybe some of the really big banks have a couple hundred. You look at a lot of the other global 2,000, it's pretty small. And I'm looking at this, these are security professionals. I had talked about some of this brain drain of security experts going from other parts of industry to both cloud providers and cybersecurity companies. And just recently, we heard, if you're not familiar with Phil Venables, who is just one of these icons of cybersecurity, first chief security officer, then chief risk officer at Goldman Sachs for years and years. And he just went to Google Cloud. And I look at my friends, I look at a lot of colleagues I have, and I've been in the industry for 30 years. And you certainly see that that's the case. That's we're seeing more and more of those people. When I go look at updates, more and more of them are going to work for the major cloud providers. They're going to work for cybersecurity companies. Maybe they're doing startups, but they're leaving a lot of traditional industries. And as you think about cloud being this compute utility that's so important, maybe that's the right balance. I don't know, maybe we'll find we're a little bit off balance, but I've sort of thought about 2023, it's going to be really apparent that we're going to see a lot of CISO / maybe they're more ISOs, information security officers. You're going to see lots of those inside cloud providers, and it's going to be very necessary, because that's where a lot of the work and the decisions are going to need to be made, and a lot of the issues. Not that we're not going to need them in the other industries, but certainly it's just a question of the balance and where they're going to go. So the people are definitely moving to cloud providers. They're moving to cybersecurity companies. There's, you know, make no doubt about that. The next one I'd like to sort of point out is just the money now that's in cybersecurity. There's, I got on the right, there's this index, the hack index, which represents, I don't know, maybe 60 or so companies, and, you know, doubled since the bottom of the pandemic. Stock market in general has done pretty well, I know, but it's done extremely well. And when you look at how it's being propped up, the valuations of cloud security companies are just far greater than traditional information security companies. And Wall Street's sort of making that bet that there's just far, far more forward-looking earnings and revenue being accrued to the cloud security companies. And you look at it on the VC side, I mean, I back in 99, I think, I had a startup and we got $5 million, and I thought that was like more money than I could ever imagine. And you look at cloud security companies now, and the amount of money they're getting is phenomenal. You look at Lacework, and this is just one of several, and several of these have all been in the pandemic. So, you know, where the money goes, that's going to determine where the innovation happens, where the technology is going to need to be. And it's really going to tell us how we are going to see our industry change in pretty profound ways. So when I think about this, and I think about like the priority, we're shifting to cloud. So therefore we got to look at how we use cloud, how we both secure the cloud and how we use the cloud to secure everything else. That, what do I see as the big things we're going to be focusing on in 2021? Well, I see that this sort of SolarWinds and other sorts of issues, you look at cloud and you look at so much of your partners, and they're in this sort of stack, which is a combination of different companies. That supply chain complexity is a big topic. I hear about that from a lot of different people. And again, with so much technology, whether you're still sort of not, you're not completely in the cloud yet, or the on-premise things that need to be there, you're not fully understanding all the ramifications of it being cloud connected, cloud managed, this persistent connection, that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny of supply chains in 2021. Some of this has already started, and we've been doing supply chain for a long time, but it's just sort of woken us up to needing to take some new perspectives and looking at this in some new ways. So cloud to edge is, I'm playing around with that way of characterizing it, but a lot of cloud to edge security. So the whole, as we know, the pandemic, moving to work from home, what we had to do was understand our VPNs and maybe go to different sorts of ways of doing this, like zero trust, software defined perimeter, which CSA innovated. Gartner's talked about SASE. You have the CASBs. There's just a lot of technology and sort of a new way of thinking, this sort of virtual software defined organization that says, how do we orient ourselves so that we can very rapidly take our people, take our other sorts of non-cloud edge compute, and have that integrate very seamlessly and in a very, very secure way that only the authorized people can access it, is just really important topical and from a topical perspective. And again, it gets too much characterized as one or the other, as that software defined perimeter, that zero trust. And I think we're going to see putting together a lot more of a framework around these different technologies to describe what it means to go cloud to edge, and what are the things that we need to be thinking about, what are the things we need to be concerned about on the work from home side, where you lose all the physical security barriers, like you're probably going to need to do biometrics if you really want to know, hey, it's that person in that unsecured home is the one that should have access to this cloud application. So there's a lot of implications of that people are really diving into. So we're taking that kind of temporary way of viewing things, and we're saying, hey, how do we really need to do this in a way that's very sort of robust, and it's thinking through things all the way through, and it's going to be something that's going to be sustainable, because there's been a lot of fixing around the edges of the work from home solution. So we're going to get to a more perfect permanent way. Even though we're not going to be working from home forever for a lot of us, we still need that capability, and the pandemic sort of shone the light on, you need to have sort of this consistent common business availability, software availability, organizational availability, resiliency, no matter what. So SaaS security is going to be a big one, and it's coming to be kind of a higher priority than even, we're seeing a little bit better sort of competency, capability on how we do our continuous integration, continuous deployment. There's always work that we can do there, but that's something that is something that's we're getting a handle on how we need to do that. I think we're getting comfortable with the frameworks, and it's not something, again, we're ever going to solve, because there's just so much dynamism and we're changing applications minute by minute. But the SaaS security side and the thousands of applications that organizations are acquiring from a huge diversity of security maturity is something that's pretty important that we get our arms around. And so we're seeing a lot of that being focused on in 2021. So with this big move here to the cloud, and we've gone to, hey, the corporate jewels are in there now. Now the ideas of the data protection, data sovereignty, how this all works on a multinational basis with all of the different regulatory regimes that are out there, this becomes like a much higher priority. We've always wanted to protect the data, but now we have sort of been forced to move it more rapidly, and we need to really understand that we're doing all the right things there, that we really have the visibility on our information. And the pandemic really has caused a lot of entropy there and a lot of scattering of information, as people want to download it, put it in their home systems to work on it, because of, again, this sort of rush. And so we're seeing a lot of scattering. target-rich environment right now for the bad guys. We know that. So the rationalization of this cloud globalization with the nation state, and we're seeing more and more countries like being very concerned about, hey, can we have information that's outside of the country? And what does that mean? Do we have to go away from cloud, or do we need to do a lot of different private cloud technologies? To me, this is something that's more going to be solved in SLAs and contracts and putting data centers in different countries. And there's just too much momentum. There's too much power on the side of cloud providers, and really a lot of the work that's going to be done there, it's going to be a taxation sort of thing to make sure that we're getting, from a national perspective, the revenue for having this global compute utility being pretty pervasive within our country and within our citizenry and within the different corporations there. So we're going to be doing that, and we're just going to need to get a lot more sophisticated. And I have a little bit that I talk about further on from that. So that's going to be a pretty big one. The automation of compliance, going back to, we've evolved into being a dumber sort of community. That's something that is no doubt continuing on, and it's requiring us to do more with fewer people. And that's going to mean a lot more automation and looking at, okay, and there's a lot of really interesting technologists and startups, things that think like something like our cloud controls matrix. And how can we continuously see how we are measuring up here? How can we really understand all our virtual machines and containers and know sort of where they sit? One more thing, that it could be a tactical big thing, but it is a big thing that we're going to see a lot of people take a look at, is the topic of terms of service for cloud providers, and how do we comply? How there's I don't want to get political at all, but there's been just in the news just the questions about large tech companies and how they are potentially dealing with some of the political dialogue, and what does that mean, and would that spill over into non-political areas? And again, I'm not being political about this. I'm just saying some people are concerned there's a little bit of a Pandora's box. And if I could opine on that, if you're trying to understand the world through your political viewpoints, that's a good way to warp reality, and it's good to take those lenses off from time to time and look at what's going on. But I think that's another area that we're going to be delving into. So CSA is really going to try this year to help a lot in these different areas. So you can see the CCAK we are developing with ISACA as a joint venture, certificate of cloud auditing knowledge. We're tracking really good to have that available in March, so it's coming up, and I'm really excited with how well it's coming together, and it's something the industry's needed for quite a while to really help us understand from the audit assurance, the regulatory perspective, just level setting the knowledge there so everyone can really understand that is pretty important. We are at CSA going to be announcing membership options, like strictly focused in providing more capabilities, services, growing the security maturity on the SaaS level. We kind of hear this is again a big pain point for enterprises, and it's just a huge market and just a lot of diversity there. So we're looking to kind of create some orderly way that we can think through that and help kind of grow that overall baseline and have a higher tide of security for everyone out there in that space. You've seen Cloud Controls Matrix. In just the last week, we've announced version 4, which is our first really major change in years. More controls, but I think you're also going to see within the next year a lot more work on developing context around that. So strictly speaking, everyone's not going to be saddled with a lot more controls they need to deal with, but we're going to be able to contextualize this for more lightweight needs and to provide better tools to say, hey, maybe it's like these 30 or 40 essential controls. So in order to get more intelligence, first we had to more intelligently look at the entire control base. So be watching for that. We're going to try and help with all the different areas here. And I think for organizations, again, understanding how the threat model changes, understanding what they need to do to sort of build in this virtual organization from cloud to edge, building in more security in their clouds themselves, understanding the compliance side, raising the level of their people, all these sorts of things. We feel like we've got different pieces in here that really help out all those different areas from education. And that character on the right, that's our Orbit, our character that represents our own private community circle, which we encourage you to be a part of, because that's where we're going to be sharing a lot more conversations. That's where you're going to see things first. We just have more control over that than we do with any of the social media platforms. So lots of real exciting things that we have. The different things that you can go find us on all the interwebs out there are our site, and just go look at all the things you'd expect to see: events, see our whole registry of cloud providers, education, research, chapters, get involved with a local chapter, explore membership with us, and then Circle, the platform, our own community I talked about. Engage with us. I'd love to hear from you there. That's circle.cloudsecurityalliance.org. So a lot of stuff to go think about. So, where's this going? What do we think further afield? There's a lot of dystopian sort of thoughts about where technology is going. I see more and more Luddites. I see more and more people wishing for that giant electromagnetic pulse bomb to like sort of create us all back in sort of this equal sending us back to the caves. But what I think is, when you look at how quickly technology refreshes, even though I think this framework of cloud and compute as a utility is very enduring, that the technology refreshes within all the different categories gives us an ability to sort of, it's like catching the right wave or like jumping on or off a merry-go-round, gives you the ability to recapture privacy, put privacy in some of these newer areas, and see what we can do about it and improve it. And so that's something that I think we just need to be smart about it. We need to look at, and the idea of building security in is one, or building privacy in as well. That's something we all talk about, but people just feel like, oh, it's really daunting. We have so much out there. But again, it's about catching that wave, understanding what's going to be very important, enduring technologies. And my personal feeling is that cloud plus something is the future of cybersecurity. And cloud, again, having this orchestrated utility, having the frameworks, having more of this knowledge from people that we can leverage across more and more companies, actually gives us a real possibility of doing things better. But it's not enough. We got to figure out what that X is. I feel like something like a more mature blockchain integration to cloud. So we have all of this ease of use, on demand, this orchestration, but we have the sort of the strategic capability to put people in control of their own data, their own technologies. We have this great transparency around what is being done and operated. We have this sort of worldwide ledger, and there's a lot of crypto, a lot of key management, a lot of things that need to go with that. But that's how I think we're going to do this in the right way. And it's going to sort of achieve this right balance between very, very powerful, bigger and bigger cloud providers, tech companies that are trying to do the right thing, and for the most part, I think they are. But to do that in a way that we all have better control over our destinies, I think that's kind of how it's gonna happen. But we're in it now. We're in this new era. We're unplugging so much of the on-premise. We're in the cloud now. We're reshaping it. We're dealing with the complexities. we're moving forward. Our people are moving. The best experts are moving to the cloud and figuring how to secure that. So I am dubbing this the Cloudzilla era of cybersecurity is where we are. And I think truly we will look back and say 2020 was when that actually happened. It had been growing that way, but we reached that sort of critical mass there. So think about that. Think about what that means. Think about the implications. Think how you measure up to that, and you know, join with us in the conversations we have about this, and participate with us, and as we sort of think through this and do our own think tanks and our own research and our own events, our own conversations about this. So with that, one other thing I want to leave you with is next week we have our Cloud Bytes Connect 3-day virtual conference where we are trying to cover a lot of these topics in a lot more depth. We like to talk about it from the SOC to the boardroom. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, C-level initiatives we're working on, as well as a lot of the fundamental technology issues that are out there. So anyway, this is my presentation. You know, I hope this has been useful to you. I hope you got some additional insights here. I know it's been a little bit disjointed. Our first LinkedIn Live, and I promise will be a lot more polished and more professional the next time we do it. But I want to thank you very much, and we will see you at the next one. Take care.